At this time, I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. Kathleen Allen.
Here.
James Bell.
Here.
Amy Callan.
Here.
Brian Chetney.
Here.
Tom Chapa.
Here.
Brandon Legault.
Here.
Samuel Tripp.
Here.
And Elise Minicha. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we have no one signed up from the public to speak, so we will move to the Board of Education. The first two items is the standard workday for employees and elected and appointed officials. This is something that is sent to the New York State and local employee retirement, and attached is titles and work hours. Any questions?
Yeah, I look at some of the hours, and I know our supervisors don't work set hours like that. For instance, Dave Crisipoli, they got him down there, start at 8 o'clock, he starts at 6, and sometimes works till 5 or 6. So how does that?
So this is only for retirement purposes. Even though you work a longer day, we have to set for retirement purposes a standard work day. So that's what the sheet reflects. Even though our administrators work probably 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
But for retirement purposes, they want to say how many hours in a day do you work, so that when it comes to retirement, they can calculate it
So
properly.
this isn't a document that sets our administrators.
It does not, it
to
is only
certain hours,
for a
yeah.
calculation of retirement purposes.
Okay, when they work extra hours, they get an attaboy or an attagirl, and that's it.
Exactly.
Could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. Next is inspectors and alternate inspectors for the May 21st, 2019 budget vote and election. It's a list of poll workers and inspectors we have for each poll site. And these names could change for some reason of an inspector or a worker gets sick. We can add to that. Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. The next one is the annual school city school district budget vote and Board of Education election designation of hours. The hours for the May 21st, 2019 budget vote is from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. at 4 districts: Scriba Fire Station, St. Paul's Church, Elam Grace Church, and Oswego Town Hall. Would there be any questions? Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. E is the annual Oswego City School District budget vote and Board of Election, May 21st, 2019. And these are designation of voter registration days. Excuse me, I should know this. That they can do it up until May 3rd to register to vote. If I could, any questions? Motion?
So I just have a question. So then that means that people who want to vote in this, like, that they have to register by?
May 3rd.
Okay.
And they can either do it, they can do it out to the Board of Elections, or they can come here. They did give me a couple forms
Okay.
that I could have them fill out and send it out to the Board of Elections.
Okay. Do we have any of that information on our website? Because I know that people have asked that before, like, how do I?
Usually, what I do every year is I take all these resolutions and I put them on the website.
Okay.
We have another resolution coming next board meeting, and that will be our annual notice that we have to put in the paper, and that has all this information on it, and that's on our website.
So is there
It
like a
will be
link
on our
for them
website.
to, could they download this application and print it out at home and everything? Like, can we
They-
make it easy like that?
I don't think so.
Board of Elections.
Board of Elections.
Yeah, because it's like a
But don't they have
tri-copy.
to
There's
copy
like
it?
three layers to it
Gotcha.
that you have to fill out,
Okay.
and then send it over to them.
Okay, thanks.
But Karen, for a school board election, if you're eligible to vote, you can vote as long as you sign an affidavit
Yeah.
without registering.
If you are not registered at the time of the vote, you can fill out an affidavit. and then you get a ballot, paper ballot. Fill it out, they put it in an envelope, and they put it in the security box of the machine.
So
You
if
can
you have
even
a-
do that after May 3rd?
Yeah, so if you have a student that turns 18
Right.
After May
after
3rd.
May 3rd, but they can still vote.
But we
as
really
long as
need to
they-
promote to get them
Right,
to
right, yeah,
register,
yeah,
and
yeah.
not just all the college kids come back home and fill out those, because that
Or
would
high school
be
kids, I was
consuming.
thinking.
Yeah, yep, definitely. Okay, a motion,
I'll move it.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. F is the annual Oswego City School District Budget Vote and Board of Education election, May 21st, 2019. Board of Registration appointment is March 20th through June 28th. There is 2 people at the Board of Elections and 2 people here listed that if there's any questions, any filling out of election material, you can call them or you can call us. Okay. Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed. Next on the agenda would be the superintendent's report. Dr. Buai?
Ready?
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
No.
Got to tell her what to do. All right, so here we go. As you know, we typically present the budget in 3 component parts. And in fact, we've started that process again this year. If you recall, those of you that were here, and certainly the board knows that 2 weeks ago, we presented the first component part of the budget, shortly after working on the tax cap. And when we dug back into the budget in the next week or so and took a greater look at the tax cap, we decided that we would roll this out in a different way, just to kind of get ahead of what the final number looks like and the type of options that the board might have when we get to the phase of a budget workshop. Nancy and I, and certainly the business office, have been working on this budget literally morning, noon, and night. And in the final analysis, what we're gonna share with you tonight in terms of the bottom line number is a long way from where we were almost 2 weeks ago. So tonight, really, we're going to talk about the entire budget. We're going to talk about anticipated revenues, anticipated expenditures in all 3 component parts of the budget. We have gone over the current operating budget for 18-19 line by line multiple times to look for areas that we could save some money. And our ultimate goal through the entire process is to keep any trimming or any reductions as far away from kids as we can. I think we've done a really good job of that, but there still is a little room for work over the next few weeks. So the first slide that you see is the preliminary state aid, governor's run to governor's run. And that's important to really look at because as you know, the governor comes out with preliminary budget numbers first, and then some weeks to months later, the legislature finally comes out with the final legislative runs, which is your actual state aid. This slide shows you the 18-19 to 19-20 governor to governor run only. So this isn't operating budget lines, state aid this year versus what the governor presented last year. It's what he said he was going to give to schools or to Oswego last year and what he's saying he's going to give to us this year. Typically and historically, the legislative numbers come in higher than the governor, and we're still hopeful for that, but the state is in quite a financial pickle this year. So the first line is foundation aid. You can see that there is an increase in foundation aid of $336,000. You also will remember that foundation aid is that bucket of aid that is most useful to us, because foundation aid is the money that we can pretty much do whatever we would like with. Most of the other aid lines are restricted to that specific area. Next is BOCES programming. You can see an increase in $980,000 under BOCES aid. Last year, you'll remember, that was the first time that we were seeing a significant increase in our budget, and it came in under BOCES aid. It's not as significant this year, but the total number is also much smaller than it was last year, or for the current year. Next is high-cost aid, and I think I talked about that a little bit in a previous meeting, but high-cost aid are the costs associated with in-district kids who are programmed through special education, and there's a reduction of $63,000, which really could represent one child. The next line is similar to that, except this is called private excess cost. This is similar aid in that it's related to special education students, but this is for private placement. Next is our regular hardware and technology, slight increase there. An increase in our software library textbook, which has NISTL money, the New York State textbook law is embedded in there. We talked quite a bit about that. Our transportation aid is up slightly. And then the final line is our building aid. And you'll notice that there's a reduction in building aid of $743,009. That's because we have retiring debt that's related to the energy performance agreement that we had for those years. And because that has exhausted, we will no longer receive aid on that. So as debt falls off, sometimes aid does as well. So the total increase, governor to governor, is $684,325. But last year, remember, the increase was $5.6 million. So that makes really punctuates the point that we're trying to create. The next slide is our preliminary revenue. And we have different pots of money that create revenue for us. And certainly the first one is your property taxes, which is generated by an increase or decrease in tax rate. And you see that there is an estimated, these are all estimates of course, because we reconcile certain figures in July, so we don't know exactly what the tax rate lands on sometimes, and so it's always an estimate. We're anticipating a small increase of $205,000 generated by levy. Our pilots, we see an increase of $233,000 this year from pilot agreements. Although remember that our current 9 Mile 1 and 2 pilot, which is our largest pilot, is at the lowest number that we're going to see, but the same number as last year. We're receiving the same pilot number for 9 Mile 1 and 2 as last year. But we have many pilots. The next is state aid, and we talked about this, but this is a little bit different. We wanted to show you on this slide. If you look at the 18-19 column, that's the final legislative run number that we got last year, which was $30,422,000. And in the 19-20 column, of course, that's the governor's run number, because that's the only figure that we have right now. So it shows that although we received, we anticipated a little bit money, or very hopeful that we'll get more money from the legislative run, the governor has committed to a higher number than the legislature gave us for this year. So I think that's good news. I'm hoping it's good news. So a total increase of $226,415 in state aid. Next is other revenues, and so there's an increase of almost $125,000. And this type of revenue is generated by things like refunds, rental, money that's generated by auctions. You know that we always auction out our buses during our bus replacement. And sometimes we also have district auctions of old equipment, furniture. Also, our Medicaid reimbursements monies are in there. Those are considered other revenue refunds. And finally, our reserves and fund balance. If you look at the 18-19, you'll recall that we used a combination of reserves and fund balance for the 18-19 operating budget. This year, we're proposing a similar number, but it's not really revenue. These are numbers that have been built into two particular reserve accounts in the district. So we're not proposing the use of fund balance, but we are proposing the use of $1 million from two particular reserve accounts. And those are our tax cert, which we think is slightly overfunded right now, and it's a safe place to go for some reserves, and also our ERS account we think is healthy enough to use some of those reserves. So no fund balance, but $1 million in reserves.
Where was the $1 million pulled from, the 18-19?
18-19 was a combination of fund balance from the 17-18 operating budget, and then some.
It was all fund balance.
Right, it was all
It
fund
was all
balance.
fund balance.
Right.
In 18, 19.
Mhm.
So the combination of those two numbers is what our anticipated revenue is?
No, the combination of, are you talking about the two reserves I referenced?
No, I'm talking about the governor's run plus the preliminary review.
Yeah, the governor's run is our first snapshot of what we expect to get in state aid,
Okay,
but we also have some revenue generated from those other lines on that slide. Property tax, some
Yeah.
levy increase,
that's what I'm saying, you combine the two
all of those together.
is what our
Multiply.
anticipated revenue would be.
Mhm.
Okay,
So our anticipated total revenue at snapshot as of today is $790,542 in the bottom right box. Okay?
plus the 684 from the governor. Or am I not?
No,
am I
that's,
missing
that's
something?
included in the state aid,
That's it.
Sam.
Yeah,
Yeah,
From
It's on the
previous-
state aid
from
line.
the
because
previous
that's bumped
aid.
up from the last
It's
one.
included,
right.
Got it,
so it's not extra.
Yeah.
okay. Got it.
Okay?
Yep, thank you.
Could
And
we
it's-
also get, and I don't know if it's in here, could we get what the current balances are in the reserves that you're,
Yeah, I think they come up, do they get those
In the
regularly?
reserves, I can put that in the, well, you have it in your fund balance projection, which is part of your financial package. But I can, if you want it separately, I can put it in at transmittal.
You want to see what the
On Friday.
balances are in each of
yeah,
the reserve
just, I'm
accounts?
looking at the fund balance right here, but yeah, that'd be great, just easier. to-
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
And you could dig through your financial packet, but we can put it on a sheet.
you said that the two files that you're pulling out of are E or
ERS,
S?
employee retirement,
Gotcha.
and tax cert reserve.
Right, and the tax cert reserve is to dispute,
It's to pay for disputes in their taxes, yeah.
so we're confident, I assume we're doing a half and a half or that
Mhm.
out of each, so we're confident that we have enough money to defend ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
Be better to not use it.
Well, that's what I mean, we're talking
We
about,
need
you
to-
in the,
Yeah.
just previously, you said we're going into negotiations with the nuclear facility, that I don't imagine
Yeah,
that that's
we're not-
free.
No, right. Well, it's never a good idea to use reserves and fund balance, and we've been pretty clear about that, and we try not to whenever we can. But we did.
Well, no, I mean,
we
if the
did
money's
use
there,
it.
the money could have been somewhere else,
Right.
if we're confident.
The issue
we can
that
use it.
creates, though, is one of the issues that created this problem, is when you do it,
Right.
it's not sustainable, so it creates a gap.
I get it.
And then, so you're kind of playing catch-up.
We had talked about those two a while back, about being possibly overfunded at the time. It was several months ago when we were talking about the whole 0% and all that stuff, just moving stuff
And,
around, so.
Yeah.
in addition to that, you had a report from our attorney on the tax certiorari.
Correct.
And he
Yeah.
had told you what our exposure is. It's about $250,000 right now. But Jim makes a valid point that when we go into negotiations, we might want to have something in that reserve
Yeah.
higher than that.
We're not
Yeah.
exhausting the reserve.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, like when you look at that report, like how much is in there and then
Right.
how much of that million is,
Yeah.
are you
Right,
Yeah,
if
saying
it's
you're
just
just
show
a half
what
and
we're
a
pulling out
half,
of each
Right.
we're
reserve.
taking 500, what's left in the till to
Right.
Yeah,
cover
we
the.
can show you the ERS balance and what we propose to use from
Yes.
it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And then in reference to the fund balance, is the reason why you're proposing not to take any money out of there is because we're below the 4% of the total budget? Or-
No.
There's a couple of reasons. First, it's really early still, and we're still reconciling the end of the year. We just cut off spending recently. We do have some money sitting in fund balance. It's not as much as we've had in other years because we've had a pretty high cost claim year for our self-insured health insurance. And then there's also the $1 million from the sale of the education center that's sitting in a holding account because we're at our max. And the board already decided they wanted to put that into the capital reserve. So it's in limbo until we get to the point where we can slide it over.
To the capital reserve?
Yes.
So you can take it.
Yes.
Okay.
Nancy, you want to add anything, or was I wrong in anything?
No, you're right.
Amy, if you look in the trial balance report, pages 1 and 2 will give you those reserve account balances.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So your ERS, monies you're talking about from ERS, a lot of the ERS money is based on what's happening with the stock market and the total state fund, how well that's doing. And if those are both doing very strongly, that helps your projections?
Correct. It does.
Right, I would think so.
It's always somewhat of a crapshoot when you're pulling
What
from
did you say?
reserve accounts.
Right.
But we have to look at trend data
Right.
and what we think the state of affairs is currently in around those accounts and how they've grown or stabilized over the years.
Right, that seems kind of less
It'd be
risky.
preferable to not
Not
take so
risky.
many, but those are the two we think we're pretty safe
Safe.
with having.
Right.
Yeah.
You obviously are not seeing, to your point, you're probably not seeing a lot of variation, so you can make some assumptions
Right.
on that, correct, or no?
ERS did not go, it went up 0.001% this year.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you look at the comptroller's reports of what ERS and TRS are doing, it's very strong right now.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
great point. Thank
Yep.
you.
So in the bottom right corner, you can see our total preliminary revenue is to the good, 790,542. The next illustrates the three component parts of the budget. You know that we already presented one, the capital, and that included the wish list. We're not going to be showing too many of those now. But we wanted to just point out again that we have capital administrative and program. Program is the largest portion, that's our instructional budget, and we'll break that down for you a little bit. So this next slide was already presented to you at our last meeting under the capital portion. And that included a wish list to the tune of $228,000 in new things that were requested by, and remember, this portion of the budget is facilities, maintenance, and debt service. But there was a request for about $228,000 in new items that were requested by buildings and grounds and facilities. Those are no longer in this budget. They never were, but we did share with you that that was the wish list at the time. So if you look at this page, you'll see that the first line is salaries. These salaries reflect buildings and grounds, maintenance, and also it's important to point out that you see a reduction of about $7,000. That's because we had some long-serving employees that left the district and have been replaced by less expensive employees, and that created some breakage for us. The next line is contractual, a reduction of $70,000, and that is the savings from the utilities for the old Ed Center. The anticipated savings from the utilities from the old Ed Center. Next is BOCE's increase of $11,000, that's for phone service. Supplies, we are relatively flat, a little increase of $9,400 in supplies. Equipment, we've held flat at $85,000 with no increase. And the next one is principal and interest, which is our debt service, and that's a decrease of $617,000. All new items are out of this particular budget, and a reduction of $673,000 from our preliminary capital budget is very helpful in our final number. The next slide illustrates all the component pieces of the administrative budget, and it goes all the way from Board of Education to auditing, to records management, to curriculum development, to supervision, all the way down to in-service training. So a lot of budget lines and elements of that particular portion of the budget. The preliminary administrative budget has these lines in it. The first one is salaries. Salaries under administrative portion of the budget reflect all administrators, central administrators, building principals, directors. You'll see that there's an increase in $76,000, which isn't a lot of money, and that number was helped significantly by the reduction of the interns that I brought in, built into the budget for this year. We cut those interns for next year. Next is contractual. You see a reduction of $21,180. You'll remember that I put a placeholder in this year's budget for safety and security personnel, and we budgeted to the amount necessary for a second SRO. But in the final analysis, we opted to go for another security officer at the high school instead, and that generated some savings for us because the security officer makes less than a contract for a second SRO. And also, we reduced our postage line. Next is BOCES, and this is our obligation to BOCES for the increase in the administrative budget and increase at city. We've kept supplies relatively flat, and we kept equipment flat, but there is $20,000 budgeted for necessary improvements and upgrades in technology. This indicates the departments that are included in the program budget, and although there are much fewer boxes to check on this slide, it is our most expensive component of our budget. This includes our instructional program, athletics, transportation, and benefits, which include dental, medical, and retirement responsibilities. The next slide shows the preliminary athletic budget piece of that. You can see a reduction of $17,775 under athletics, and that is due to the reduction of the summer strength and conditioning coach. We felt confident we could hold our equipment line flat, but not reduce it. And also contractual, there's a slight increase in contractual because we have maintenance contracts on equipment certification as well as officials fees that we have an obligation to. And our supplies, we kept flat at $60,000 for athletics, so that provided a small reduction of $16,775. Under transportation, we have natural increases in salaries, $88,937. Equipment we've maintained flat at $10,000, but you are going to see an increase in contractual at $72,000. There are some significant repairs that have to be done to transportation that go to health and safety, and just equipment that's really necessary for us to maintain our fleet. We talk a lot about our bus fleet over the years, and one of the reasons that we keep our costs down is because we have a high-performing team of mechanics and really good equipment, and we need to maintain that. It's necessary. BOCES is flat, $500 for BOCES, and that would be for transportation for maybe one particular student or program.
Dean, what was the increase in the salary portion again, please?
The salary increase,
Yeah.
$88,937.
Yeah, what was it for?
That would be all salaries for transportation staff.
Okay.
Drivers.
Just in general?
Yeah, yeah, all those salary lines that I leave in, those are all collective bargaining increases.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you.
So an increase in supplies at transportation, but still an increase overall in our transportation budget of $150,000. On the next slide, really, if you just focus on the last column, which is total buses, you can, and then slide down to what I've been told is the yellow band. We currently have a fleet of 66 buses and a variety of types of vehicles. We have SUVs, small buses, wheelchair buses, large wheel buses, and our typical 66 passenger buses. That's our current fleet. This year, we're proposing the purchase of 9 new buses, and that line will tell you what types of buses that we believe should be on the ballot for purchase. And the next shows that we're going to sell 10 buses. So we're going to reduce our fleet by 1. And we have been doing a cyclical replacement of buses regularly. That's what keeps our mechanic costs down. And so that is what our plan is for our bus fleet.
I see in 2011, we bought 4, and then 3 years later, we buy 7. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The 2019,
Yeah.
we buy in 9.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking to buy 9. We bought 9, 16.
16, 8, 17.
Right.
Yeah.
So I see the trend jumps there, and if we're
Mm-hmm.
on a cyclical program,
Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah. But then you see, Jim, in the 18, we only bought 4. And I think it goes back to, it precedes us. And when we didn't
Right.
have this replacement plan, and our buses were aging and being identified through not only data associated with repair,
okay.
inspections, and then we realized that we needed to do this consistently because we had an old fleet.
This last column is how many buses, the total
Yes.
amount of buses.
Yes.
bought.
And if you look in 2015, we didn't put forth a proposition for any buses in that year.
Right, we skipped that year.
I think in 2011, when we bought 4, that was before we started to replace the older buses. At that time, we had a larger,
Yes.
A bigger fleet.
we had more mechanics too.
We had a lot more
personnel
mechanics, the
in
bigger
the
fleet,
department.
and
We
we
started
weren't
buying,
selling them as successfully as we are now.
right.
No, I get
Yeah.
the theory of it,
Mhm.
and I get replacing them with state aid makes more sense than paying for labor that you don't get any aid on.
The other thing I might want to point out on this slide, although it's not in the slide, for the sake of conversation and discussion, Tom, the transportation supervisor, is proposing that 4 of the 9 new buses are gasoline. We'd like to start looking at gasoline operating buses instead of diesel, for a variety of reasons. I'm not with Tom today, and we talked about it. They're less expensive to buy. Gasoline is cheaper than diesel. They have more power. They're easier to operate by the drivers, and they're more versatile in cold weather. So we're gonna give it a try, and
Well, they're cheaper,
we're
much
cheaper
less
about-
expensive.
Yeah, how much less, Tom?
$6,000 to $8,000 a bus.
That's it?
Yeah.
Really? Same thing as a pickup.
Yeah.
So then, so what's the reason for buying diesel to begin with?
Mileage, wear and tear, you can get 400,000 miles on it, we don't use it for 400,000. If we only use it for 150 and get rid of it, go to gas, you save 50 cents a gallon, plus we don't keep it that long.
And we pay less.
So our
to buy it.
resale might hurt a little bit, but we're going at auction anyhow, so it's not that big a deal, though, it's not that big of a loss.
But a lot of districts are starting to slide over to gas.
Yeah, well, no,
Probably
you,
almost the same reason.
yeah, the cost is,
No,
Particularly
it's-
districts that don't have a facility like we have for our buses.
right,
Right.
take care of it.
Or to store them indoors.
Right, I know, yeah.
You have to be heating the block or, you know. so.
And our whole current fleet is diesel now.
Right.
So we have diesel tanks. So if we were to convert, we want to try it out first because then we would have to convert our tanks
Another
over
5
gas.
grand.
Yeah.
No,
And-
25 grand.
Yeah,
And for a period of time, we would need gas and diesel
right.
tanks. I guess the plan would be for these 4 buses that we would fuel off-site,
No, we have a gasoline tank.
that we use for our trucks and things.
Now, another question too, do we keep track data as far as how many students in the district ride buses, like per grade level? To really know what the need is for, say, 60? But
I
mean,
agree, you
wonder,
need the
like,
data,
you know,
but-
when you're looking at the
doesn't
trends
matter,
through the
require
years, like what,
transport.
I mean, I know it seems like when I see a lot of buses drive by, there's not a lot of kids in them. And I just hear that a lot, so I'm just wondering, and I know that this always comes up when we have a vote, and people say, why do we need so many buses?
Right.
Nobody ever rides the bus, blah, 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 blah. So I think it is definitely something.
Anytime you have an emergency where you have to transport all the students from a school to
Right.
an alternate location, you
Yeah.
need all those
You
buses.
have to be prepared to be able
Or
to
if we
do
ever
that.
had a nuclear emergency and we had to transport every child off-site.
Right.
But you're right.
Are we
We
not
see that-
mandated by the state to have that?
Yes,
transportation?
you have to have the number of
Because-
days.
So, I mean, those are all good things, like talking
Yeah.
points to, because it is something that
Right.
comes up every year.
Well, if the state mandates, and this is one of the mandates, they actually fund, right? They do give us money for buying buses, they
Right.
funded it 60-something%, right?
But last year we struggled to pass this.
Right, yeah.
This
So
was
I'm
one
just-
that that
Well, people
was
don't
kind
understand.
of close.
Right.
It's close.
But I think that, again, like I said, like those kind of talking points are important,
Yep.
but so people do understand, so when
Yeah.
they go to vote,
Mhm.
they get why they need to vote yes, you know,
Yeah.
so.
It was only a few years ago that, I live near Kingsford Park School, and when I go by, I see all, drop off, pick up all the parents dropping their kids off, and many people have said to me, well, why we got all these buses with only half full? So I started looking into this,
Right.
and I even thought about one time, was asking parents to sign off, look, beginning of the school year, I'm not gonna use bus transportation, I'm gonna transport my own child.
Yes, yeah.
Can't do it because state mandates, so we have to have, even though they're not using it, they can do sign off
Has to
anything
be-
they want,
it has to
but
be
we still
available.
have to have a seat for those students on that bus.
Well, what if partway through the year, they lost their vehicle and they can't self-transport anymore? I
Yeah.
mean, there's a whole lot of
It
things.
comes down to the state mandate,
Mhm.
That's
but people need to, when we get asked that question, that's
Yeah.
how we explain it, that's the answer.
Okay. This slide illustrates our preliminary benefits budget. That's that portion of that section of the budget. The first one is very helpful, a reduction of 408,000 in ERS, TRS, and that is because our TRS rates are down. And so we're capitalizing on that. We also had an increase of 57,000 under health and dental, and that's because our new dental program is running a little bit less expensive than we anticipated in the first year. Next is workers' comp, which is flat. A slight increase for SS and Med. And then our Medicare Part B is up slightly from 900,000 to 1.1, which is an increase of 200,000. Now you will remember that our bargaining units in collective bargaining gave up some Medicare Part B reimbursement for spouses over time, and so we'll start seeing some savings in that.
And that's that
That'd be
reflection
that,
of that. right there.
yeah. So the total reduction in preliminary benefits budget of 177,229. Preliminary program budget. You see an increase in salaries on this slide. And that's because although we tried not to add a lot of things, we didn't add much at all into the budget this year, it was necessary to add, and is reflected in the number, 2 elementary teachers, 4 assistants that are program driven, and a 0.5 ENL teacher, which is English as a new language. We currently have ENL classrooms at Kingsford Park and Riley, and the number fluctuates greatly, but right now we're looking at 0.5 ENL. There are days when it should be a 1 FTE, but we feel pretty confident that we can get by with a 0.5 ENL. Next is contractual. Yes.
What's the difference between E and L, ESL?
That's new ESL.
It's no longer ESL, it's
It
now
used to be English as a second language.
Is there an
Now it's
acronym for
English
that?
as a new language.
Okay.
And it could be something different next year.
Yeah.
It has changed
Right.
actually since ESL to ENL.
Okay.
There was a placeholder in there.
Is that,
Yeah.
Dean,
Yes.
so you said 2 elementary teachers and 4, I missed.
4 program teaching assistants.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
and then the
And a half
0.5
ENL.
ESNL.
I got really confused. Next is contractual. Contractual, it's important that there's 551,665 increase in contractual. Over 450,000 of that is for private residential placement for Oswego students. So we have some real high cost budget areas related to, and you saw that in the earlier portion, the special education programming in district and special education programming out of district, and in some cases, that includes residential placement, particularly for students that are older but still of school age, 18, 19, and need to go to a residential placement. That's very expensive. And sometimes one student can move in that you didn't see at age 17. It's hard to budget for this, but that's the increase of 551.
Approximately that 450,000 that you're referring to, how many students does that, how many?
Could be 4.
So-
Do we have an actual number?
I believe it's 3 at this point.
It's 3 students.
It's 3, so
Yeah.
it's approximately $150,000
It's quite expensive,
per
yes.
child to administer the,
And they're
Mandated.
they're 12-month programs.
It's a residential.
Yeah.
So it's not just
24/7.
school year.
Well,
And as Dr. Gui said, not all were placed by Oswego City School District. Students tend to move into our district, so we are responsible for continuing their programming. I have made it a point to go out and see students in program, despite some great lengths of distance, but it is important for me to make sure that we do that, to make sure that the district is supporting students in the best way and least restrictive environment.
That's important too for us, because our programming of students with special needs is different than a lot of districts send all of their students with special needs, full spectrum of autism, certainly, to BOCES programs or, residential treatment facilities, residential home facilities when they get to be older. But it's important to see them before we assume the cost when they move to Oswego, because we want to make sure that we can't program them effectively in our school in a more less restrictive environment.
like, if we have an avenue as opposed to what they've been
Right.
dictated by some other district.
Exactly, and we can make a case that we have a program that's,
Can accommodate without
yeah. Mm-hmm.
absorbing the cost.
Yep. Next is BOCES, and that's an increase of 281,424. That number reflects an increase in PTAC, the Oswego County Literacy Initiative, and some other special ed programming at BOCES. So there's an increase in 281,424 at BOCES. Supplies. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Is an increase in P-TECH, is that, what's that connected to? Is that that we're gonna send more students there, or?
Well, there's a lot of conversation about PTAC right now about the affordability and sustainability in the long term.
Mhm.
So the chiefs and Chris Todd have been meeting regularly, having meetings with our OCC partners to see if we could maybe reduce costs by not charging our kids tuition. So we're trying to whittle it down because the long-term projection of costs for PTAC was escalating significantly, and in 4 or 5 years was over $1 million. And so, and many of the chiefs in Oswego County were not the superintendents that were part of the grant development, and they're getting some pushback from their boards about PTAC because it is so expensive. And the original agreement was that all 9 component districts, including BOCES, so really 10 component pieces, were paying an equal share for PTAC. And so the selection of the students sometimes resulted in a district getting an unequal share of kids, but they had to pay the same amount. And so if you have a Pulaski with a much smaller student population and budget, and they got 2 kids in, and a Fulton got 8 kids in, you can see the internal unrest with that.
Yeah, everybody's paying the same amount, as
Yeah.
opposed to paying for like a
So we're taking a really
piece,
critical
yeah.
look at how we select, how many students will participate to try to keep the cost down. But this line reflects the anticipated increase in PTAC in its current format. So this could be reduced.
And that's what
Yep.
BOCES is working towards, is a formula that works to that per piece.
Yeah, the chiefs
kinda-
are working on it together, and because PTAC was a 9-component district program, it's not a BOCES program,
Mhm.
but they're a component piece of it. This
Right.
wasn't something they created.
Right.
The LEA, the lead educational group, is APW. And I was the superintendent that came in right at the very end of the development of PTAC, Sean Bruno and I from Mexico. And although we signed the original PTAC agreement and the grant, we weren't part of the development of the grant. And now all 9 superintendents have changed over.
Hmm.
So
Since
those
it's-
9 superintendents that created PTAC are gone.
How many
So-
students do we currently send to the P-TECH
Um,
program?
I would have to get to that.
It's going to change every year.
Yeah.
Right.
Changes.
And there's been,
different.
and there's been some fall off.
Right, so
Like-
kids who go
Well,
into
we
the program
pushed it
and then
up.
decide to.
We really
not
have
stay
been
with it.
promoting it because we did well in year 1. I think we got 8 or 9 kids in the first cohort. And the next year, and some districts didn't, and there was an equity. So on year 2, on selection day, the room was full of superintendents watching, wanting their kids to get in.
Right.
And we didn't have as many kids admitted in year 2. And I was concerned that we didn't do a good enough job of promoting it or recruiting kids. And Mary Beth and I met that year, and we really ramped it up in year 3, and we got a lot more kids in. By making them aware, having P-Tech folks come in and do presentations in middle school, and things like that. But what P-Tech looks like could change slightly, but there will be a 1920 cohort.
Didn't they originally expect private funding to help out with that whole P-TECH program?
There is a grant, but the grant will expire, and the state had assured us that there would be some additional P-TECH or other pathway program funding coming up, but we've heard no conversation about that. So we're starting to get concerned that when the grant expires, we're holding on to a multi-$100,000 program that you can't sustain quite that easily in your general fund, although we all love it and want to. So
part of those presentations that were given by P-TECH,
yeah,
to Novelis and other places, they talked about it being fully funded by the grant,
right,
that 9 schools need to be involved, that the attendance needed to be at a certain level. So they were really pushing that there was a certain number given by each of the 9 districts, and it was at no cost.
At no cost.
To the
Don't
districts.
get Nancy started, because I have to say that it's the county business administrators that really led the charge in, like, you guys, we told you this wasn't going to be free, and it was 100,000, that was 280,000, that was 380. And so finally the 9 chiefs said, stop, we have to rethink this.
So who's having these conversations? Or are you guys having these?
Superintendents. We had 3 superintendents go to meet with the vice president of OCC late last week.
Yes.
To talk about this, and to provide them with a state ed memo that we are aware of that says that they don't have to charge us tuition, but we do pay tuition for our students in years 3 and 4, and sometimes in year 5. We're trying to do everything we can to whittle the don't report that. I'm saying more than I should.
Right.
But
Well, I think it's something that we should look at, right?
Yes.
Because the message that's being sent is different than what's obviously
right.
showing on paper, right? So the message that we hear on a yearly basis
The cost has been
it
escalated.
is
We've been
not
building it
that,
in.
right?
It's
Because
not
the
free.
cost that, some people that are invested into the P-TECH program from a graduation standpoint
Yes.
are under the assumption that there isn't a cost to that.
Sure, because
Right.
that's what they're telling everybody.
Right.
Yeah. And we pay it all.
And from a placement perspective, it's a great program, and
It is.
you could end up being a fantastic opportunity for somebody.
Right.
But I think it's important to realize what the true cost to the
But if we
district
get it
is.
at a place where a P-TECH student's cost is relative to a full-day CPE program,
Right,
that's a win-win.
right.
So we're looking at a lot of different options to keep the program running but affordable.
Okay, good, thank you.
Did you
So-
say what the cost was per student?
He's not sure
I
how
don't know.
many.
I would have.
You don't even have an estimate?
It's not broken out by student, Kathleen, it's just the whole program cost, less what the
Divided by
grant
10.
provides, and then that bottom line is what is dispersed to all of the districts equally. So it's not on a per student basis.
And that's why they're saying some of the smaller schools aren't taking advantage or,
Right.
because they're getting hit with the same fee. So, I mean, if we could send
Or they
200.
don't
right?
have enough in a school district of 480 kids, so
Right,
might
they
only
don't.
have 2 interested.
Right.
Right.
And the original agreement, and the way the grant was written was, it was equal shares, and equal wasn't fair. So we're looking
So-
at driving costs down and a better way to select and distribute equally from district to district.
Right, and even if things all remain the same, the cost per pupil this year could be different than next year because the
Right.
cost would remain the same, the amount of students
That's
would be
right, so
different.
that's why you
everything.
see that number of 281,000,
Right.
and a big chunk of that is increase in P-TECH.
Interesting.
Increase in P-TECH. Yep. But it's not all of it. We have the Oswego County Literacy Initiative, which is the initiative in our schools. All of our elementary schools, it focuses on pre-K through grade 3. It's being assisted by the Reading League, and CKLA is the instructional model that we use. And we have coaches embedded in that money as well. So, there's some high ticket items, but these are instructional programs that we're trying to stay away from. We're not going to touch OCLI because we're all committed to that. Next is supplies, a small reduction in the program budget under supplies. And then the next one is $94,000. But it's important to point out that the $100,000 furniture replacement proposal that I put into last year's budget for this year has been cut. And the last one is benefits, and this is the same number as I illustrated in the previous slide. The reduction in benefits.
Could we just go back, because I had a question about
Yeah.
that. So in the equipment, that was the replacement, the cyclical
Yes.
replacement value.
That we wanted to do, and we put it in this year, and
Right.
we used it
What did we use it on?
this year. Each building was given a chunk of money. We started originally by having a furniture committee, and people wanted different things.
Mhm.
So ultimately, we decided to just give a per building allocation, and they could, some were spending on flexible seating, like you've seen in some of our tours. Our principals were spending on different things.
Student desks, teacher
Student
desks,
desks. Yep.
carpeting
Chairs for the
for,
yearbook room that have to be elevated.
Okay. So they had the flexibility to spend it as they wanted.
And what was the line amount?
It was $100,000 all in.
Split 70.
Yeah.
Did we start off higher with that? I feel like the number was higher.
No, that was the original number, 100,000.
100?
Yeah. But we wanted to sustain that annually.
Right.
Right, trying to create the same
Yeah.
program as we do with the
Yes, but we can't now. However, in the capital project, there is some furniture replacement built in. I think it's primarily at the middle school, because that's our most aggressive rebuild. And then finally benefits. So there's an increase in $1.3 million. And it's important to point out again, I know I've said it before, but that increase of $1.3 million under program is where the biggest number should be. This is instructional programming. So total budget, last year we had 84,115 in revenue, and we spent 84,115. Right now we have anticipated 84,905,617 in revenue, and we managed to work our expenditures cost down to 85,232,113, which lands us on a gap of 326,496, with very few reductions that have hit instruction or children's programs hard. It's important to point out too, if you look at this and you see that revenue was flat while expenditures increased 1.3%. 1.3% is significantly less than a natural rollover budget. A natural rollover budget in districts that do rollover budgets are at least 2%. So we've been able to get it down to about 1.3%, but we still have a gap of 326,496. So that leads us to what we have to hope for. What we have to hope for is the legislative budget run, and now we're significantly ahead of ourselves in terms of our time frame. So now we can wait a little bit and see what the indications are for the legislature, and hope that the increase between the governor's run and the legislative budget run is $336,000. And then we will be flat, maybe balanced.
What is the traditional difference between the first pitch and what we get?
It's hundreds of thousands typically, Jim, but I didn't run what the numbers are, but it's always higher. But the state is in a pickle.
yeah.
So I like to say I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, but.
Dean, right now, it doesn't look like the sky is falling in on us, but it does
No.
prevent us from adding any teachers or
Correct.
counselors or any of that stuff we
Right.
hope to be able to do.
Right, we hope to enhance social emotional developmental health. We hope to enhance beyond 2 classroom teachers, our instructional program. There were some other things we wanted to do with team leaders to bring those things back. We haven't reduced any athletics, we haven't reduced any gloves, we haven't.
So it's,
So this is the best scenario we could hope for, considering that we knew we were gonna go in with a gap. I feel very relieved that we were able to get the number down to this. And that there's some hope that the legislative run will fill the gap.
Right. Well, yeah.
If not, we have other options that I don't want to get into now that we can do in the budget workshop. There are some other options.
Sure. We talked about some of those earlier in the
Yes.
year. When we started talking about the 0% rollout and that, we knew we were going into this being tight.
Right.
We knew it was let's say a calculated risk, right? For a lot of reasons. But we did have options that we knew that we could pull from. So hopefully that the legislative budget comes in higher and it looks well. If not, then we buckle down.
Yeah.
We got some other options.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, 326.
You did a good job. You guys did a good job. Thank
$4
you.
million is nothing. I mean,
Right.
Relatively speaking, so.
Well, it's better than the 5.6 million that we tackled in 2016.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
Correct.
and so far everybody's, I'm sure the staff is breathing a sigh of relief.
So do we have an estimated idea of when that will come out, that number will come out?
We really don't, but
Generally,
Nancy and I are gonna meet with Will next week, we typically do, and he knows, and he's advocating for us, and, the main reason I wanna meet with him this year, because it doesn't typically result in anything, but we have a nice conversation, but I'm hoping he'll give me some indication of when it's coming.
Right.
Not how much, but he always pledges the support of public schools, and he does.
Well, they've also got an uphill fight trying to get AIM money back to municipalities too, so they're fighting for both more
Right.
school aid and AIM money back to
Right.
municipalities.
They have that same problem, you're right.
Dean, your last presentation had this page on it. Can we assume that that's gone now?
Yeah, I referenced that when we were talking about that portion of the budget, that 200 and some thousand dollars in wish lists from facilities, buildings and grounds, maintenance, those items are out. Nothing new is in here.
All right.
Nothing new except for the instructional staff that I pointed out, the 2 elementary classroom teachers, the 4 instructional teaching assistants, and a .5 E&L.
I just have one other question here with, actually it's 2. So I know in last year, actually, we had asked to see the forms that the directors and principals filled out to give their wish list. So if we could ask that again to see, I think it's beneficial for us to be able to see what they're asking for, their reason for asking it, and then what the dollar connection is to it. So I think, and if it's the same across the boards, we're comparing apples to apples.
What did we give them?
Exactly,
And
yes.
were they,
Well, I can tell you what we gave them.
So I think if we could
Yeah.
definitely,
Teachers.
yeah.
Or
if we could see those when we do the budget workshop. And then the
Yeah.
other thing is, could we kind of set up a tentative schedule? I just don't want to miss anything. And I know I gave you the dates that I'm going to be gone like a
Yeah.
month ago.
I think
So-
because we're ahead of a schedule, you'll be safe.
Okay.
I think if the legislative run comes in, we can adopt the budget before that.
Okay. Because, yeah, I'm only gone for 8 days. And I know one year it was scheduled when I was gone. So I'm saying it out loud. I just want to make sure that, we do it so everybody can be there. So.
Mm-hmm.
Do we anticipate any increased savings and breakage for additional retirements?
That's a very good question.
Mhm.
It's been very quiet this year about retirements.
Very
Last year, we
quiet.
had a lot of retirements. Last 2 years, we've had a lot of retirements. This year, there's some buzz about a few classroom teachers. There's some buzz about a social emotional developmental health support person. Not a lot.
Just
Not a
curious.
lot, but I
That
did
was
send the
something that we
message
could-
out through Dr. Sweeney that I've waived the required number of days, as long as they give us enough time to get the retirement paper in for us to adequately do a search for a replacement. And if there are some retirements, we would look really critically at the necessity of replacing, depending on the position and another. Not a lot of buzz about retirement this year. We have a very, very young instructional staff and some some newer folks in support staff positions too.
I would suggest too that we don't sit, I mean, we talk about hoping that this number comes in, the legislative number, but to be proactive about it, and make phone calls to Will, make phone calls to Patty Ritchie, that we all should do that. And we should, advocate for the board, advocate all the way around, and make that a proactive, be proactive about it as opposed to just sitting back. Because the more people they hear from us, the more it's going to be on, higher up on their register.
Yeah, in 2016, we did a pretty aggressive letter writing campaign with the home and school presidents and with the union heads. Remember, we inundated
We did to help
Patty
bring
and
back our
Will,
athletics.
Patty and Will, to reinstate the state aid formula. First of all, they owe us about $60 million, but if the formula had been running adequately, but that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, I think maybe we should
And we
do
can
that.
generate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but if you wait till you lose it, then it takes a year to get it, so you
Right.
might as well start now and
Right.
then be proactive and
Yeah, and
put
get
that on the front
information
page.
to the right to the
Put
home and
both
school.
numbers.
Yes.
And we got some feedback from
People
our
have a
office, so
formula.
stop giving people our fax number. Because we realize that mail they never see, but faxes get their
faxes they see.
attention.
Oh, true,
At the
yeah.
fax machine.
It ran
Going
nonstop.
off on the
Right.
ground.
Yeah, that's what it ran nonstop.
Keep blessed.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That means the meeting's over? Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
No, I have a couple other things. The one thing I did want to just promote before we move on to the rest of the agenda is that we have the Jules Vapes opioids and students presentation that Rhonda has been coordinating. That is on Friday night from 6 to 8 o'clock at the Oswego High School Theater. The Oswego County Prevention Coalition is part of that, and we're going to have a panel, a great panel of folks from Farnham, Poison Control, COA, and also Tobacco Free Network of CNY. I'm going to do a welcome to the audience. These have been posted in the schools, and we're going to put it. Has it been posted, Jamie?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's up?
It was posted on Facebook previously, and we're going to be sending out a reminder on that.
And we're also going to do a robocall on Thursday.
Yep.
Yep. And we're really encouraging parents to bring their students, because this is becoming a real problem. Juuls in particular and vapes are a problem across our district. They're a problem across our region. Chiefs are talking about it regularly. At my last student lunch, I had 7 seniors with me, and I brought it up, and they were a little squirrely about talking about it at first, but then they really got into it. And this is a problem that hits all types of students. And I think the biggest concern is that they're being marketed toward kids, let's face it.
They advertise this.
Okay, yeah. They look nice and they smell nice, and we're fearful that kids think they're safe, when in fact they're just as dangerous as any tobacco product.
They're way worse.
And it's just, it's time to start talking about this in school and outside of school, so I would encourage people to
6 to 8, you said?
6 to 8 at the Oswego High School Theater. Okay, thanks.
Next on the agenda is community discussion. Would there be any discussion from committees tonight?
So the Community Relations Committee, we met on the 11th, was it? The 11th. We had a great meeting. It was very positive, and I think we had a lot of really good brainstorming ideas from the members who were there. Let's see, some of the things I can share here. We talked about, really trying to bridge the gap and connect the community to the schools. We talked about providing opportunities to bring local business people to the schools to speak with students and talk about what being fully prepared and life ready means to them and their organization and what they're looking for in students. In just kind of a way to connect our students to see a real person from Oswego, in a business that maybe they could see themselves in. and just really make that connection. So we talked about different efforts of how we could make that happen, and I guess ideas that would make the ease of that. So that was really exciting, and we came up with some great ideas. We also talked about, sorry, I'm just reading my notes here, because there was a ton of stuff we covered. We talked about that there's a lot of opportunities, again, within the community for camps or talks or all sorts of opportunities that oftentimes they get missed. And if you're not affiliated with that organization, parents aren't, that they don't know about it. And so we kind of brainstormed and we thought, wouldn't it be cool if like on our website we had a page that was like the community link. And so if there were programs offered at, say, the YMCA or something offered at the H. Lee White Museum, or, I mean, literally, there's a bazillion ideas, and camps at SUNY Oswego, that we could actually have those links on the community page where parents could go and start planning basically their summers with their kids, or, open weekends. But again, to bridge that gap between the school and the community. So that was another thing that we talked about. We also talked about, I don't know, I can jump into if you think of something here. We talked about the mode of current communications. And I know that I've heard a lot from some parents that everybody agrees, those of you who have the text capability, that you receive the text messages. But a lot of the feedback was if the text could just be text and not also voice messages, because everybody's like, they're getting the text, it's a voice message. And then they're getting the robocall, and it's like inundated with, so everybody's like, if we could just be a short, simple text message, that's what texts are. And then the robocalls was a voice recording. And then emails were actually emails, not a voice recording. So those are all things we just kind of, talked about and shared, and thought to bring it back to the board to, get everybody's feedback into administration. So.
Amy, I know what you're talking about, because I get the text and the robocall and that.
And
But how would they determine who's getting the text and who's not getting the text in order for them to get the
It had to be
robocall?
paperwork or something for each house, because I, same thing, at 5 o'clock in the morning, my wife's goes, and then mine goes,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then
it's
her
crazy.
goes, and then
And then
mine
your
goes.
home phone, and then,
Then
so.
the kids come in, and they got theirs going.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's
Well,
ridiculous.
and I think the voice
But
recording thing.
we do know what's going on.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, you wanted to know, now you know.
So I don't know if it's Jamie, like how do we
Yeah.
get the text to
Fine.
not be voice?
If we don't put in, so for example, a reminder went out last night about our climate survey. It was 1 minute and 27 seconds long. We didn't put an SMS out with that because there was so much information in that voicemail last night in that reminder
Right,
that won't fit as a text message.
right.
So the system automatically just says, okay, you've opted in, we're just gonna send you the text of the voicemail to listen to. So if we don't specifically type in a text, that's how sometimes it happens. So on a snow day, for example,
Right.
we do have a text associated with that voice message. So on a snow day, your phone will ring, it'll be the voicemail. I think Karen's voice is on that one, right? And but then there's a text that goes out with that saying Oswego City schools are closed today. So, but the reminder last night, we didn't specifically put a text, so it sends you a text of the voicemail recording. So most of them we do try to add text to, but if it's a very lengthy message, we don't. Or if it's something that
out of the text.
you can opt out of the
No,
text.
I like the text, I
or-
just don't like getting a voice recording as a text.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
And for some of them, it's just too much information to fit into 160 characters.
Because I know I'm gonna get in trouble.
Exactly, there you go. Easy peasy. You can tell everybody else who's complaining to do that, because you're either gonna, you get people complaining they're not notified, and now we're getting complaints because we're notified? Stop.
Yeah, it just comes with a link, and you push the link and you play it.
Right,
Yeah.
if you get,
Yeah.
if you
I
get
get
the
an email
robocall, but just, you don't have to answer it.
I think it's pretty plain that the district is making every effort to make sure everyone's notified.
Notified.
Yeah.
You can be in your car, you can be in your driveway doing snow removal.
Yep.
You can be in any number of places and very easily miss one of those media absence and not get that message, so.
Well, you can
cover
remember
your
when we were
bases.
kids, you remember when we were kids when we had
Had to wait
to
for
watch the
the,
TV and make sure.
watch the
you missed
TV.
it.
Right.
Oh wait,
Watch
he's
that.
too young. It was WSGO, listening for Bob Sykes.
Yeah, oh, I know, the other thing too that we talked about was that in, we were talking about the, mainly it had nothing to do with elementary schools because there's not as much going on after school activities, but it had to do with middle school and high school in particular, that, and we all agree that while the stress is to have our kids be independent, we agree with that part, but that if there was also a backup, so that, you know, if parents knew what meetings were going on that particular week, that you could say, you know, don't forget you have such and such, or at least know. So there's a, you know, backup ability. And I know that, and I had shared with the group that there was a, I don't know if I have it with me.
Yeah,
but
it's
it
an
was
email, like a
yeah,
weekly
an
email that went out.
electronic email. So it would go out on the Monday to all the parents of the high school, say, and it would just have a list of all of the meetings that were gonna happen that week. And so, again, you know, you could read it, you could delete it, but it would bridge that gap and have that, you know, backup source of parents knowing what's going on, because I'm sure you've all heard, I mean, I've heard this where, you know, the kids, some of the classrooms don't play the morning announcements. Some of them, you know, there's a variety of things. It's not placing blame at anyone, it's just situational. So I think it just makes sense to have an email that goes out every week, and then that way parents know what's going on. So, in addition to the kids. So that was, did I forget anything?
No, just the one other thing that we're going to be looking for other members, and through Dean going to be sending out through the district, looking for other people for the Community Relations Committee, so we were making sure we were touching all elements of the community and being open. That's, we're going to do a follow-up with Dean and send that out.
Yep.
Good.
That's everything. So
Okay.
that was that for the community relations. I don't know if anybody else had a meeting. Facilities.
I did not make the meeting, the 10 o'clock one there, I didn't make it.
Yeah,
So,
I got you.
I emailed
You
it.
texted me.
Yeah.
When was the meeting?
Thursday, the facility
Thursday.
committee was invited in to sit with the architect meeting
Yeah.
at 10 o'clock. It was brief,
Was it?
yeah,
Okay.
but it'll become more regular once we start getting deeper
Sure.
into the planning phase.
Okay. And when they do, could we, 'cause I
I
didn't,
went.
Yeah.
so who was at the meeting?
I was,
They don't come to.
I was mostly with the wrap up of the capital project.
Oh, they're not.
Oh, the existing one.
They are-
Mostly it was a wrap up of that, and Nancy, not Nancy, who
No,
presented?
I didn't get to make it.
Tony presented, you know, what the balances were, how much money we'd used out of the accounts and so forth. And a lot of it isn't closed out yet. It was mostly about that, and then they talked about, as we move into the capital project, the big one, hiring a construction manager. So next time we meet, Greg is gonna bring some names for the committee to review, and then we'll do some interviews and hire a construction manager and move forward. And I think, the only thing, a lot of people have asked me, you know, we voted for this, and it's happening now, when is it gonna get started? And because of the time process of moving through state ed and bidding and all that stuff, the only thing that's going to happen this summer, if I'm correct, is the pool pack at the middle school. They're gonna replace that because that is a small part, and that is in need of replacement in order to keep the pool up and running for next year.
Yeah.
So that's probably the only thing, in fact, that is the only thing that's gonna happen this summer.
This summer.
The rest of it will kick off in next spring.
Breakdown spring of 2020.
In the spring of 2020?
Yep.
Okay.
Spring of 2020
This
with a
time next
with the completion of phase one in the fall of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. The phase one is pretty aggressive.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big piece. It
Yeah,
covers
it's a big piece.
here.
It's also a very
And the high
visible piece, so
school
people are
and-
gonna be able to see,
Mhm.
you know.
So,
There's production in it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And Sam, didn't Craig make a suggestion too, as far as the construction manager, the job manager, that we do it by phase as
Yes,
well?
yeah.
As far as being competitive, so you
because
don't
the-
just, you don't award it, so we can
Right.
compete.
Don't let them have all the
Right.
phases, let them work
oh, so
for
they would just
each
be
one.
given the
Right.
job.
Got
for
it.
that
Right.
particular
Yeah,
phase,
how you
okay.
perform.
Do they act as a clerk of the work?
It gives
Yeah,
us an
that's,
escape
yes.
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah,
If we
that's
get
good.
a site,
Slug.
yeah, exactly.
So
And we-
spring of 2020 start and spring of 2021 completion.
Fall of 2020.
Fall of 20.
Yep, fall of 2020.
Of phase one.
Phase one.
Yeah.
Is that going to include, I feel like it's not, I know it's not the completion of Buck Boulevard, but it's the initial stage,
Yes.
The
right?
first half of Buck
From-
Boulevard, sorry Sam.
Go ahead.
The first half of Buck Boulevard up to the entrance to Layton,
Right.
Okay,
not the finished coat, but all the.
All the
infrastructure
curbing and
stuff.
stuff.
Curbing, the drainage.
Right.
and all the
Infrastructure.
parking's gonna be
No,
or
the
not?
parking is beyond that, that's in the next, that's the part adjacent to the theater entrance.
Yep,
Yeah, we would only go up to the Layton parking lot, and the
It
reason
stops
is.
there.
because
We're
of all
not
the
changing,
heavy
that's
equipment.
phase two is out here.
Layton parking lot here, so it'd be the parking down on the other side of the field, and then, right,
The Buck Boulevard entrance,
right, down here,
Yep, at Hillside.
down there,
yeah,
no, yeah, down there.
yeah,
Along the current softball field.
yeah,
To the entrance into Layton
gotcha,
would be part of it. At the very end, at the end part, because there's gonna be so much heavy equipment related to the development of the multipurpose facility,
right.
that's
There's
gonna
no
get,
sense in
it's gonna get
building
beat
that
up bad.
infrastructure.
No, yeah,
And
no,
then
I
at the
agree.
end, do that first half, because then the same will be true for the next phase, which includes, you know, all the rest of Buck Boulevard, the parking associated with the high school,
Tennis
the ed
courts,
center,
tennis
tennis
courts,
courts, baseball, softball, then they'll beat that end up. We may have to change traffic patterns.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
They wanna put new roads in.
That might be
and
spring
drive.
it.
Yeah,
These
I mean, I'm like,
too.
are we gonna fill in some of the potholes, like in the interim?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Hope so.
We could fill
We
it
just put a
every
cone
year.
in them, they're fine.
bad.
Twice a year.
Well, in my other thought, and I don't know if this is part, I don't recall what the design was or if there has been any talk, but, I mean, I'm on that road every day, multiple times a day, aside from the potholes in it. There's a couple things I was thinking of.
The width.
With all of the parking spots. I mean, when we were in high school, it was a, you know, you could go both ways on the road.
Yeah.
Is there any way we can go back to both ways on the road? Because,
There's a lot of parking.
well, but we're also gaining a lot of parking.
Well,
So-
we're gaining because we would keep that. I think that maintains that one way in our plan.
I mean, I just
If
think,
you do that.
it's not, there's nothing that's written in stone, and I think it's something to think about, because when you have all those parking spots, the people who are parked get stuck in there. I know that there's been a couple fender benders of people backing out in cars picking
Inside
up
of
parents. On Buck
Inside the
Boulevard.
Boulevard.
No, it's
On
not
Buck
the-
Boulevard. Then also with all of this new curbing and everything, I mean, right now, if any of you guys drive down Buck Boulevard, what's every parent and every bus do? They drive up over the curb and they have two wheels on the sidewalk in order to allow cars to go through. So the current way that it is does not make sense. I mean, I think that we really need to look at an alternative option, if that means put
Right.
2 lanes in there, move the parking, because I just think that to redo all of it and not do it,
Well, we can't
Right
widen, I asked the same question, we can't widen Buck Boulevard, but what we can do is change the angle parking to parallel parking, because remember, we're adding 100 and some parking spaces in the new parking
Right, that's
area
what I'm
that's
saying.
associated with the caged area. Because we have the same problem, Nancy and I were asking the same issue, because buses pulling up on the curb
Yeah.
is,
We have a lot of student traffic going across Buck Boulevard too, where if you made it going in 2 directions, I think it would increase the safety hazard there.
you can ask about that.
yeah, I mean, it was like that before. So, but I mean, and then my only other thing, and this is a major pet peeve, I don't know if anybody at Layton, the lines, how the parking flow is in Layton is so backwards, it makes me cuckoo every time I park there. You know what I'm talking about? It's like you feel like you're driving the opposite way of the way you're pulling in. It does not make any sense.
It is crazy.
And I just, like, every time I pull in, I think, okay, when we redo all this, I think things like that, we gotta think of things like that, have input from.
I think it was just a matter of relining the park line.
Yeah,
The
me
police
too.
department can do that.
Lining
Right, that's what I'm
arrows,
saying.
you gotta have the one-lane arrows.
Oh, you can
But it-
now.
yeah, it's like,
Now
that's
you
like,
can.
parking spots on the
That's
opposite
right,
way.
I
Now that you
totally
can, it makes no
forgot.
That's what's bizarre.
That's what's,
Way
yeah,
off.
you're
That
right.
one-way sign
I
out of there.
forgot this year.
I just want to say the
Yeah,
list,
I
can you
forgot
make
that.
sure
That's
that
there,
for
that
the-
makes the difference right there.
Upcoming meetings that you guys post that.
That would be right
For
on.
facilities
Yes,
committee.
yeah, thank you. Oh, and the only thing I want to say was
I don't
the,
think it got, it didn't get posted because it wasn't a facilities committee meeting, it was an architect meeting, and Tom had asked us to pull in the facilities committee folks at the end to kind of talk about wrapping up the project.
okay, all right.
But yeah, we'll post facilities committee meetings
Okay,
once I get
that's
that.
great. And our next community relations meeting, I forgot to say that, is May 6th, 5:30 in the boardroom.
Okay.
Okay. Next is the consent agenda. A, minutes of the regular board meeting of March 5th, 2019. Approval of the treasurer's consolidated report, monthly budget status report in the Oswego City School District. Financial report, February of 2019. Fund balance projection, February 2019. Monthly transfer report, February 2019. Extra classroom activities fund report, Oswego Middle School and High School, February 2019. And the special education board report of March 19, 2019. Would there be any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Ryan, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No items for curriculum tonight, so we will move to personnel, and Carrie Class will be reading this.
Okay, professional staff retirement, that the Board of Education accept the following item as follows. Professional staff retirement, Lisa Brown at the high school, 2001 to the present, and has been a most responsible, conscientious, and dedicated staff member in service to the school district. Now therefore be resolved that the members of the Board of Education of the Oswego City School District hereby acknowledge the faithful service of Ms. Brown upon accepting her resignation for the purpose of retirement effective June 27, 2019, and we express our grateful appreciation to her.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
B, professional staff retirement, that the Board of Education accept the following professional staff retirement for Lynn Hawksby, OHS, whereas Lynn Hawksby has served the students and staff of this school district as a teaching assistant for the period November 18, 1998 to the present, and has been a responsible, conscientious, and dedicated staff member in service to the school district. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education of the Oswego City School District hereby acknowledge the faithful service of Ms. Hawksby upon accepting her resignation for the purpose of retirement effective June 30th, 2019, and we express our grateful appreciation to her.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C, support staff retirement, that the Board of Education accept the following items. Support staff Robin Pryor and transportation. Whereas Robin Pryor has served the students and staff of the school district for the period October 3rd, 1990 to the present, and has been a most responsible, conscientious, and dedicated staff member in service to the school district. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education of the Oswego City School District hereby acknowledge the faithful service of Ms. Pryor upon accepting her resignation for the purpose of retirement from the position of school bus driver effective June 27, 2019, and we express our grateful appreciation to her.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
D, professional staff recommendation, leave of absences. The following: Sean Fitzgerald, elementary teacher, Brianna Marker, teaching assistant, and Rebecca Ware, teaching assistant, as presented.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
E, extra compensatory position recommendation for middle school spring sports. That the board accept the following position: boys modified lacrosse head coach, Greg Galatz, I hope. Boys modified lacrosse assistant coach, Adam Mahalski, senior.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
F, extra compensatory positions for unified sports for the spring 2019 season for basketball as follows, as needed basis.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
G, extracurricular volunteer recommendations for the 2000 spring sports as needed basis, varsity boys tennis, Greg Cowan, and girls lacrosse, Cara Di Natale.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
H, supports staff recommendation, resignation, that the board accept the following resignation: Donald Fitzgerald, school monitor at the high school.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I, support staff recommendation, leave of absence, that the board accept the following leave of absence: Sarah Schultz, custodian at KPS. Sarah will be asking for a leave to work on her civil servants exam, and she's transferring to Fitchie Park.
Any questions? Motion?
Make the motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
J, support staff recommendation, probationary, that the board accept the following probationary positions as listed below.
Any questions? Motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
K, support staff recommendation, a change in status, that the board accept the change of David Woolworth, a custodial worker. He's transferring from Kingsford Park to Oswego High School.
Any questions? Motion?
Make the motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And L is the substitute and temporary employees as listed below, that the board accept the following.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next will be finance with Nancy Squires.
A is a budget transfer for building and grounds, $2,000 from their supply account to their cartridge account.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
B is a budget transfer from transportation, garage, and building and ground supplies to water.
Any questions?
Yeah, is this just an increase over a year? The rates went up, or?
So what had happened with our water meters is the city has been doing estimated readings. And based on the estimated readings, because we don't have the proper units for them to scan from the outside, and they don't go inside anymore, so they're doing estimated readings. So there has been an increase due to those estimated readings. We have a plan in place working with the city in order to phase in new meters. They're relatively costly. So we're going to do that, and we're going to do a reconciliation at the end of the fiscal year so that we can true up the estimated readings to the actual readings.
I'm surprised it's made that the estimates are higher than, because typically they would follow the last 5 quarters and they would take that.
But they've never trued up.
So they've been estimating,
Never taken it.
they just stopped going into buildings.
They stopped going into
6 months
buildings.
ago, a year ago,
Yeah, I
whatever.
don't know how long ago.
So they've been
they-
estimating, is that because our meters haven't been working, or we're sending that, that's probably one of the meters that we would have to replace, and so they're
Yes.
guessing, and I gotcha.
Yeah.
So now you gotta spend $7 or $8 grand on a meter,
Correct.
and then you make it right after they do it.
Exactly, so what we're doing is we're going to phase in half of the meters this year, and then half of the meters in the following year.
Right.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C is a budget transfer of $50,000 from debt service to our special education line, students with disabilities, their tuition line.
Any questions?
So that increase is because of,
The increase in the students with disabilities, we had 3 students move in after the budget was completed last year.
And so we've covered that cost up until this.
We have.
Where have we been pulling that money? That was allocated in that line?
We had some money allocated in that line, and hopefully will get us to the end of the year. I may be coming back to the board for another transfer.
And what, the debt service TAN,
Mhm.
what,
So that's a tax anticipation note line. We always put in at least a buffer in that line of $100,000 a year. In the eventuality we run into a difficulty and we're not getting in our tax revenue in a timely manner,
okay.
we can go and do a short-term borrowing.
But our taxes been due, people
Yeah.
have paid, we're in good standing, so
Yeah.
we've got that money to pull from there to use it.
Yes.
Gotcha.
thank you.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
When, can I ask a question? When we get a student like that, or several students that we absorb those costs, is there any recourse to go back to the state to ask for additional financing in any way, shape, or form?
No, they become ours.
That's it?
It's no different than if we have foster students or McKinney-Vento students that are
Yeah.
homeless. They become ours and
Right.
we incur the costs.
I get it, they're just,
It's tough to.
that
budget for.
particular one is very impactful.
Mhm. It is.
Okay, so,
E is a budget transfer for $180. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not all on one page. D is a budget transfer from various lines to the district meeting line, and this is to cover expenditures where we were short for the elections for the budget for this year. So we had only anticipated holding our regular school board elections and doing that vote this year, but we had a second capital vote, which took the expenditures, and now we're short in those lines. So that's what this transfer will do in order to pay for poll workers.
And that's coming from that same account as the previous.
Yes.
The TAN.
Correct.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second? Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
E is a budget transfer of $180, and that's from state-aided software to state-aided equipment, and this is Trinity Catholic's allocation.
Any questions? Motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, right here.
Actually,
Apples and juice at Kingsford Park School for their 5th grade.
Any questions? Motion? Brian? Second? Amanda? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
G is for the board to accept a donation from Donors Choose to Kingsford Park School in the amount of $317.26 for can-do ball chair and stools for their 5th grade class.
Any questions? Motion?
Move it.
Brian, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next will be items from the board. Would any board members have an item?
I have a couple. Just wanted to thank Mary Volkmer and everyone for Friday night. They did their carnival over at Kingsford. It was a great event, great turnout, great community event that they had. So thank you for Mary and such for helping with everything that was for that. That was good. Second of all, tomorrow, or not tomorrow, I keep saying tomorrow, and I'm telling everybody the wrong day. Thursday at Salt City, there is a school safety forum that's being put on. It's co-sponsored by my office and the district attorney, and all 9 districts are involved. And basically, my office has the capability of sending 25 students to it. Right now, I'm close to that. I'm around 20-something to there. City's gonna provide another 25 students. So I have a few openings left. So if there's anybody within the district that wants to send a student to city that day, they are going to feed them. It's the afternoon, basically the afternoon city schedule, so they could take the bus and be transported back and forth with the city bus. But that would be, I'll give you anonymous, but it's all going to be basically just gathering information as to safety within the school, so that obviously changes, if necessary, within the whole county can be made to make it a safer environment, but also to learn some of the things that are happening so that we can work on those things. So I just wanted to put it out there that there are a few spots still left. If anybody's interested in sending anyone, or you know anybody that wants to go, then you can either contact my office or just get a hold of me, and I can, or Patrick probably has the information.
Put it out to the Key Club and the Student Council, and I do have some students that call.
And I will say on a positive note that a lot of the students coming from are coming from Oswego, which is good. So that's a good representation. And the reason why we're using high school only is because of the transportation piece. So, so I just want to put that out there. That's it. Thank you.
Anybody else? I just have similar things, just two reminders. On the 21st, Central New York School Board Association is doing a presentation at City BOCES. It's March 21st from 6 to 7:30. I believe the board members, I think everybody got an invitation to go. I don't know if anybody, I'm planning on going. I'm actually going to bring my son with me, high school student. And it's just going to, it's called Pathways to Jobs. So it's going to explain the opportunities that city offers to our students. So that is open to anyone. I spoke with Renee Stone, and she said if anybody's interested, parents, teachers, students, just to go, and they'd love to have you. So that was 21st, and then the 27th, a reminder that Oswego County School Board Association is going to have the presentation on the dangers of addiction, and that's the one that will be with Daniel Baldwin, and it will be at Fulton Auditorium. So that's on March 27th at 6 p.m. at Fulton. And yes, I believe so, yeah, sent that to counselors and school board.
I sent it out to
Yeah.
wider audience.
And that's open to anybody too, parents, teachers.
Amy, do you have to pre-register for that, or can you just go?
Nope, you can just go.
Just go.
Yeah, that's why we decided to do it in an auditorium, because we can hold the most amount of people, so.
In Fulton
we
High
volunteered.
School?
Fulton.
Fulton High School.
Yes, yes.
I went to the thing on campus that was promoted by.
The safety.
Yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't really geared to school districts whatsoever. I know Kara is here still, right? Kara was here.
Yeah.
Kara was there with a few teachers from Layton, and Mike Wilson was there. It was fascinating. I mean, it was kind of like a Dateline episode. The guy had his, it really was interesting. You know, you got to see the camera, the footage from him after he was shot, and 911 calls, and I mean, it was really interesting, but it wasn't geared to schools at all, but it was mostly law enforcement. And then also, I just want to thank Rhonda for, I know you said the last couple of years you've been doing the signings for students, and I just want to thank you for the way that was done the other day. It was really cool, because I don't think people realize how many athletes, how many high school athletes actually move on, because the number is so small. So it's a big deal when you
Yeah.
get our signing. So thank you for doing that.
Very nice.
Thank you, Rhonda.
And you got there-
Piggyback off that too, thank you to Rhonda for another piece that we're doing, and actually to Jenny as well, that I came out of retirement. I'm coaching some 8-year-olds now, and which is where I'm going from here so shortly. But thank you for Rhonda for the gym time that we're able to use, and Janetto has been great to use. That hopefully we haven't left it too bad a shape, because 12 8-year-olds running around is not a good thing sometimes. But thank you for accommodating to that, because again, as we look at a lot of the challenges that we have within our community, and getting our kids up, aside from being busy what they're doing in the day, but then keeping them active as well, I think is great. That whether they decide that the sport they're playing is something they want to do later in life, well, right now it's something they want to do, and it's keeping them busy and running around. And So as the snow is finally melting, it gave them an opportunity in the winter to do some ice. So the schools have been very accommodating to that because I know they're really tight on schedule. So.
We have a lot of student recognition scheduled for 2 weeks. Art, athletes, music. A lot.
Skills.
There's a lot of kids.
CTE.
Skills, yeah, CTE, CTE competition that we recognized last year. Those kids.
Shout out to the lead in the musical. She's here. She did an awesome job.
Any other items from the board tonight?
Oh, just a reminder too, I know Jamie's robocall for the survey was really informative, so thank you for that, and just a reminder to have everybody do that. Participate with the survey, so that's it, that's all I got.
Great, thank you.
Would there be a need for an executive session tonight?
Yes.
Okay, reason?
Mid-year evaluation discussion.
Could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session.
Awesome.